When the screen's audio finished, the image changed abruptly. Between two sheer mountain walls, a lake stretched out, and two titanic beasts faced each other. One resembled a spider with metallic skin, the other looked like a dinosaur, only far larger. The dinosaur-like creature pulsed with blue light, opened its massive maw, and fired a beam of blue energy at the spider. The spider sent out a strange fluctuation that weakened the blast, then charged. The camera pulled back. Dozens of meters-tall creatures flew across the sky, spewing flame as if in pursuit. Fire swept along a chain of peaks, and then those peaks trembled and moved, revealing monstrous faces. Mountains, it turned out, were disguises for gigantic beasts. A herd of elephantine monsters lumbered to the lakeshore and drank with thick, swaying trunks. The water exploded as colossal spider-like predators rose from below, blasting out intense cold that froze the mammoth creatures solid. Long tentacles plunged into the ice, trying to drag their prey back into the water. In the next instant, the ice shattered. The trapped behemoths swung their trunks and retaliated, and a brutal, chaotic battle erupted. Our task force captured many scenes of monsters fighting and hunting one another, the screen narrated. On this island, creatures have formed a self-sustaining food chain. Their biology and interactions are full of mysteries. Whether they originally evolved on Earth or came from other worlds remains unknown. Continuing the investigation proved too dangerous. The Containment Society attempted multiple airlifts to extract task force members, but the missions failed and resulted in heavy casualties. Eventually, the Containment Society found that the monsters inside rarely left the island on their own. The Society established a maritime blockade and erased the memories of anyone who learned of the island. They also prepared for the possibility of escape, because if even a single monster made it into the human world, the destruction could be catastrophic. Any sign of them emerging must be met with overwhelming force immediately to prevent drawing more creatures out. Records show the Containment Society has contained this island for over 10 years. Several large-scale escape incidents have occurred, each cost many lives and nearly exposed the island to the wider world. No one knows when the monsters might finally swarm out. When that day comes, it may be beyond the Society's ability to stop them. The island has never had an official name. Because of the countless skeletal remains left by predators and prey alike, we refer to it as Skull Island. The footage ended, leaving everyone watching in stunned silence. The monsters on the screen had been awe-inspiring and terrifying. So cool, these monsters are way cooler than Sea Kings, Luffy burst out. Aokiji frowned. Hey, that's not exactly the point. Moriboshi Dan snapped, barely keeping his voice under control. This isn't about whether they look cool. It's extremely dangerous. If a large force of these things were in any of our worlds, it would be a disaster. Dan and Feng Yuan both knew how deadly kaiju-level threats could be. If Skull Island somehow appeared in their world and everything inside poured out, even Ultraman 7, Ultraman Leo, and Gantras would have their hands full. The Containment Society's repeated efforts to prevent escapes made it obvious they possessed weapons and measures well beyond ordinary military capabilities. Garp, unconcerned, grunted. Is it really that bad? I've fought gigantic beasts before. They don't look so impressive to me. Sengoku shot back, dryly. If you had your strength and the Ox Talisman on, maybe you wouldn't be worried. The problem is, by the time we reach it, we might not be able to control the situation. Tsunade added, Exactly. We can't even be sure where it will appear. Sun Wukong, still riding the high of his earlier display, waved a hand. Is it that big a deal? When it shows up, we'll handle it. If any monster comes out, I can just solve it with a Kamehameha. Everyone fell silent at that. Sun Wukong's previous attack, his Super Saiyan Kamehameha, had been devastating. Save for the Ultramen, almost anyone struck would be annihilated. His confidence bordered on reckless, but the raw destructive power was undeniable. The screen's narrator returned, drawing the room's attention back. Now predicting where Skull Island will appear. All eyes tracked the map as a precise location blinked into place, beside the Sabaody archipelago, in the One Piece world. A collective exhale spread through everyone who wasn't from that universe. Nick Fury, representing Esild, wiped his forehead. Good, at least it didn't show up in our world, he muttered, visibly relieved. He preferred dealing with discrete SCP objects, singular, controllable threats, not an entire island of predators. Don't go rifling through my memories, Natasha complained, half teasing, half annoyed. Fury grew mock offended. I wasn't. Where's Stark? Natasha interrupted, glancing around. Fury noticed Tony Stark was absent. He said he had some research to do and left, he answered. Tony was indeed on his private jet, already tapping away at a tablet. Jarvis, how's the progress on the giant armor? He asked as soon as the cabin door closed. Seeing Ultraman Leo face down towering monsters had sparked an idea. If such things could appear in any world, humanity needed a response larger than conventional suits. Sir, a giant mecha is not simply a matter of scaling up a Mark suit. The technical challenges are significant, Jarvis replied. Tony sketched rapidly, eyes alight. I know. Energy and AI I can solve. The trick will be flexibility and reaction time, mobility. That's what we need to nail. For Tony, nothing was more exciting than building something huge and dangerous, especially when it might actually be needed. Chapter 142, The Straw Hat Pirates Mistakenly Enter Skull Island. When the location of Skull Island was finally displayed, the Straw Hat crew all went pale. Sabaody Archipelago, isn't that just a short distance ahead? Nami cried. Then aren't we almost at that monster island? I don't want to go, Chopper wailed. Help me. Usopp joined, and the cowardly trio immediately clung to one another, bawling. Change course, quickly. If we keep going, we'll end up on that monster island. Nami snapped the order, and Chopper was already rushing for the helm, until Robin spoke up. The ocean around them, where they had been sailing a moment ago, had, without anyone noticing, transformed into a dense forest. The Sunny was no longer following an open sea route. It was now moving along a wide river that cut through the trees. The sudden, impossible change left everyone stunned. Woo, we couldn't have actually entered Skull Island, could we? Usopp asked, his fear making his face worse than his tears. From the look of things, yes. Nami shivered. I wonder what huge beasts are lurking under this river. Robin peered down at the riverbed with her usual dry humor. The screen in front of them blinked, detecting entry into Skull Island, releasing Skull Island monster information. No! Usopp, Nami, and Chopper screamed at the top of their lungs and clung to each other, howling. Quiet, idiots! Do you want to attract monsters? Zoro snapped, glaring at the three of them. They immediately clamped their hands over their mouths. Miss Nami, as long as I'm here, no monster will be able to hurt you, Sanji declared, striking one of his exaggerated, flirtatious poses and fawning over Nami without even considering whether he could actually stand against any of the island's terrors. Hey, didn't we say we could escape by flying up? Coup de burst, Usopp blurted, remembering Frankie's move. I'd do it if the captain agreed, Frankie said, looking back at Luffy. All eyes turned to Luffy. He was grinning ear to ear, that simple, dazzling smile that always made him seem innocent and fearless. Skull Island, monsters, endless space. Sounds like fun. True to form, Luffy wasn't scared. He was thrilled. Nami, Usopp, and Chopper watched his expression and felt their blood run cold. I smell adventure. Let's go, tame a few giant monsters, and make them our friends, Luffy shouted, pointing ahead. Are you trying to get us killed? Nami snapped, marching up to him and pounding on his head. As captain, you should protect the crew. Get us out of here right now. I'm the captain. I decide where we go. Luffy retorted stubbornly. Nami roared back at him like a demon, eyes blazing. Luffy only dug in more. You're all cowards. Come on, tell him, he said to the others. Seeing Luffy so set on it, the rest of the crew split. A few chimed in excitedly. I like exciting adventures. If Robin's staying, I'm going too. We can leave any time. What's the point of being afraid? Yo-ho-ho, Monster Island sounds cool. But the three cowards were unmoved. The onboard screen continued to cycle through monster profiles. King Kong, skeleton lizard, long-legged mother monster, Godzilla, Muto. Photos and names flashed relentlessly. I don't want to know, Nami screamed. A chorus of strange bird cries suddenly echoed through the sky. Dozens of giant birds, each over 10 meters tall, appeared and began diving toward the Sunny at incredible speed. A massive splash exploded behind the ship as a colossal swamp giant squid rose from the water. They're here, someone shouted. Nami, Usopp, and Chopper shrieked, while the rest of the crew snapped into battle readiness. Stop the screaming, Zoro barked. We can't do anything about where we are now. It's a good chance to test our new weapons. Zoro drew the Zanpakuto Ashura in his right hand. He had been training for days and felt he had a preliminary grasp of the blade's power. Now it would be time to see how it performed in real combat against monsters from another world. "We don't have a choice. Just make sure I come out of this in one piece," Nami said miserably, forced into a fighting stance. The first battle for the Straw Hats on Skull Island had begun. They weren't the only ones who'd been pulled here by mistake. In the river that cut through Skull Island, a submarine materialized out of nowhere. A man in a black and white spotted hat climbed out, looking around in alarm. "This isn't Sabaody Archipelago," Trafalgar Law muttered. "Boss, look!" Bepo pointed behind him, shocked. A huge spider, the long-legged mother monster, was closing in. Law's face went hard. He scanned the area and cursed under his breath. On the slopes of a nearby mountain, a red-haired man ordered a pile of metal to gather on his forearm and then sent a volley of steel into the air. Tiger-like creatures, the sacred tigers, were flying away in pieces. Eustace Kid, currently top among the supernovas, stood grimly on the mountaintop. "Killer, how are things on your side?" Kid shouted. "Done," came the short reply. Around Killer and his group lay many carcasses of sacred tigers. "How did we get here?" Kid demanded, looking around in confusion. They'd thought they'd reached Sabaody and disembarked, only to be attacked and realize they were someplace else entirely, and now the way back was nowhere to be found. A deep rumbling shook the ground, nearly knocking Kid off his feet. "What's that?" he shouted. He looked up and saw a sight he'd never forget. A behemoth the size of a mountain was lumbering by, an enormous land monster magnified to terrifying proportions. Even before he could think, Kid's body trembled instinctively. Something in him screamed not to move. Chapter 143, The Navy Fights Monsters. Luffy actually broke into Monster Island. When Garp saw the scene on the screen, his jaw dropped. "That damned Straw Hat! He beat me to it again." Sengoku's face went dark. Hey, he just stumbled into Skull Island by accident. That doesn't count as containment, right?" Aokiji, standing nearby, spoke up. He had heard about the containment idea from Sengoku, and after seeing the earlier examples, had a general understanding. "That's right." Sengoku snapped to attention. He hadn't seen any system notification saying the Straw Hat Pirates had successfully contained the island. He picked up the transponder snail. "All right, Akainu, Kizaru, you two lead your fleets to contain Skull Island now. I'll send support warships." Kizaru blinked in confusion at the order. "Contain an entire island? How are we supposed to contain something that big?" "Idiot," Akainu said bluntly. "The worlds contain the IKEA mall the same way. Surround it with a fleet, block all exits. That's containment." Kizaru toyed with the idea, acting as if enlightenment had just struck. "Oh, I see. Sengoku Aji, you lead your squadron too." He mostly wanted Aokiji involved so the credit and any reward would be shared. Should the fleet admiral himself go? No, Sengoku couldn't leave Marine headquarters lightly. "I'm not going," he said. Garp casually settled into Sengoku's chair and without a care, started picking his nose. "If Luffy runs out and I meet him, that'd be awkward. I don't want to lay a hand on my grandson." "That's despicable," Sengoku barked. Garp's flippant remark made Sengoku explode. He turned to Aokiji, who was already walking to the door. "Hurry up and go." Aokiji startled and took off. He muttered with a rueful sigh as he left. Garp, however, stayed glued to the screen. On it, Luffy, now in his Nika form, was casually toying with the monsters attacking Skull Island. "Fine," Garp said to himself. "Just stay on that island for a while. Don't come out." For Garp, containment by default was the best possible outcome. Out at sea, Akainu and Kizaru were ordering the warships to converge on Skull Island. The admirals, faced with monsters from another world, felt a flicker of anticipation. As the fleet drew near, the island answered with terrible roars. The decks of the marine ships filled with uneasy murmurs. The sea itself seemed to shudder. From the forest sprang several giant spider-like beasts, Muto, emerging to investigate this strange new world. Curious, they started to move, as if intending to leave the island. "Monsters! Admirals, monsters!" sailors shouted. "Don't panic," Akainu snapped. "They're just big beasts. Ever seen sea kings? This is nothing." Kizaru, unimpressed by the crew's fear, grinned. "All right, let's see how these compare to sea kings." He entered his elemental state, light starting to glitter across him. In an instant, he dispersed into countless particles, reassembling high above the Muto. Can you go back where you came from? Yasakani's sacred jewel. Kizaru clicked his fingers and unleashed a storm of light bullets. They tore into the forest. Blinding flashes and thunderous explosions filled the air. The Muto roared in fury. One lunged through the reek of light, swiping with its blade-like legs, only to have its limbs pass through where Kizaru had stood. Kizaru reformed above it, condensed light into his foot, and kicked down with the force of a meteor. Boom! The Muto slammed into the ground. Its armored skull split, brain matter splattering. It couldn't rise again. The others advanced, but Kizaru zipped higher into the sky to avoid their reach. He frowned a little. The feedback from that kick told him the Muto's toughness was far beyond a Sea King's, harder than he expected. One kill was manageable. A whole nest of them was worrying. Kizaru's grin tightened. Huh, harder than I thought. I'll have to turn it up a notch. On the decks, Marines who hadn't seen the full scale cheered their admiral's confidence. As expected of Admiral Kizaru, mere monsters can't beat an admiral. Their fear dissipated, and they opened fire with the ship cannons. The cannonballs did little. Compared to Kizaru's light attacks, the salvos were insignificant. A Muto, hungry and clever, spat a strand of webbing. It latched onto a warship 100 meters away, wrapped around it like a net, and then yanked. The crew had no time to react as the ship was hauled through the air toward the beast. Nah! Terrified screams filled the sea as sailors were flung from the deck. The Muto trapped the warship in its jaws and held it up, craning its head to look up at Kizaru as if taunting him. Kizaru hovered, slightly annoyed. Oh my, it even takes hostages. That's inconvenient. From above came Akainu's explosive roar. He streaked through the air and cheated gravity with a brutal stomp across the sky, arriving at the edge of the island in an instant. Great eruption, scorching river. Akainu's fist became a molten maelstrom, a volcanic surge of magma that smashed down over the Muto holding the ship. The magma engulfed the beast and the vessel, burying screaming sailors as it cascaded. The Muto writhed. Its metallic hide began to melt and stream away in the heat, howling in pain, but its eyes still burned with hatred. Akainu frowned at the creature's stubborn survival. Couldn't kill it in one blow? Hard to deal with. He showed no mercy for the men buried in the eruption. To him, they were collateral. The magma was the law. Chapter 144. The unrepentant Akainu's actions had been witnessed by many, and the outrage was immediate. Hey, what's wrong with this guy, Akainu? Naruto snapped. How can he attack his own comrades? Akainu sneered. Indecision loses wars. If you let a chance to eliminate the enemy slip away because of a hostage, that is the greatest mistake. What kind of twisted logic is that? Naruto shot back. If comrades are taken hostage, we rescue them. We don't kill them along with the enemy. What a naive brat, Akainu said coldly. Do you think justice is easy? If you don't take a hard line, you only encourage evil. To fight evil, you must be prepared to sacrifice for the greater good. Sacrifice people who fight beside you? Are their lives meaningless to you? Naruto demanded. If sacrificing a few subordinates saves many, then some things must be sacrificed, Akainu replied. Fortunately, you are not my subordinates. Though people like you, indecisive, sentimental, I'd like to kill them just for looking at them. The others listened in stunned silence. Naruto's face was pale. Sacrificing comrades in the name of justice was beyond comprehension. If you were a shinobi of Konoha and did something like that, I would never let you go, Tsunade said, her voice full of disgust. A person who can't protect his comrades is nothing but trash. Moriboshi Dan chimed in, scornful. Talking about upholding justice while recklessly sacrificing people, that's the incompetence of a leader. Say what you want, Akinu replied. Looking at your lot, it's easy to see why your world is in trouble. You should be glad you haven't stood before me, Diana spat. Otherwise, you'd pay for this arrogance. Tony Stark smirked. That's some dark kind of justice. Kind of sounds like our military, doesn't it, Fury? Hey, Stark, don't, Rhodes began. Fury cut him off with a dry cough. He didn't want to get into this. He'd made hard choices, sacrificed lives for missions, but only when there was no alternative. What Akainu advocated was blatant and reckless. How long would Marine morale hold if officers openly ordered subordinate sacrifice? Heh, Orochimaru said softly. Perhaps, If that old fool hadn't been sentimental and killed me in time, I might not be alive right now. Tsunade, Orochimaru added, turning his eyes to her with a smile that made his hair stand on end. Do you really think Konoha is any less dirty than this Akainu? Enough with the deflection, Tsunade snapped. You'd better hope I don't catch you, or I'll take your life. Oh ho, Orochimaru said unperturbed. Then you'd better find me before I create something new. This super beast manufacturing machine is fascinating. It can fuse different sea virus monsters to form even more powerful creatures. I'd love for you to see it. What are you planning to do by making monsters like that? Tsunade demanded. You haven't forgotten why every village covets a tailed beast, have you? Orochimaru asked. You aren't thinking of. Tsunade began. Ha ha! Just you wait, Orochimaru said, his grin widening. I will bring earth-shattering change to the shinobi world. As long as I'm here, you won't get away with it, Jiraiya growled. Perverted hermit, Naruto said, surprised. You've been quiet. What have you been doing? I'm dealing with the monsters in Sunagakure, Jiraiya said grimly. I went there to recover sea virus stockpiles. Most handed it over, but one official got hot-headed and injected himself with everything he'd bought. He turned into a grotesque giant monster and spread the virus everywhere. It's been a total mess. By then, more than half of Sunagakure was in ruins. The beast that had started it all lay in the middle of the main road, a 20-meter-tall monstrosity of writhing tentacles, twisted flesh, and a proliferation of unblinking eyes. It had happened about 10 minutes earlier, when Jiraiya had used his presence to intimidate the village into surrendering the sea virus. The officials agreed to hand it over to save lives, except for one defiant senior who refused and shouted he would resist to the death. He then injected himself with a dozen vials. The result was a massive mutation. His body expanded and contorted into a towering horror. His mental and physical power increased dramatically, and the chakra that emanated from him made his jutsu more potent than elite jonin. Worse, the creature continuously released sea virus gas, infecting others and turning them into monsters, and the village descended into chaos. Fortunately, Jiraiya had been there. He demolished the giant abomination with overwhelming force, then turned to rescue survivors and combat the leaking sea virus gas. Damn you, this is all your fault, a ninja shouted at him, bitter and blaming. If you hadn't come meddling, none of this would have happened. This sea virus, it turns people into these things, another murmured. Even as monsters, they're terrifyingly strong. Some of the higher-ranked shinobi hid darker thoughts. Even amid the devastation, the raw combat power on display was undeniable. Are you idiots? Jiraiya barked when he heard those murmurs. Didn't you see what that monster did to your village? What good is turning into a mindless beast? He grabbed the ones still cheering the strength as a boon, glaring until they blanched. They were so frightened they thought he might kill them in his fury. Shh, he was just greedy, someone muttered, trying to defend those who'd injected themselves. Aren't Orochimaru's creations controllable? Even after seeing the catastrophe, there were people who thought they could harness the monsters without paying the price. That stubborn, short-sighted greed made Jiraiya furious. It was exactly that attitude, unwillingness to learn from pain, that had kept the shinobi world at war for so long. Before Jiraiya could rip into them further, one of the men advocating the sea virus was suddenly cut, his throat slit with a single, precise stroke. He didn't even have time to react before he collapsed, blood spilling over the ground. The room fell completely silent. The one responsible stood in the doorway, Granny Chiyo. If you truly consider me an advisor, Chiyo said, her voice cold and absolute, then from now on there will be no contact with the sea virus. I will not let this village be destroyed by such monsters. Though frail in appearance, she radiated an aura that felt like an entire army. The high-ranking shinobi of Sunagakure and their subordinates all froze beneath it. The warning was unmistakable. Cross her, and you would not live to regret it. Chapter 145, Navy versus Monsters. When Granny Chiyo spoke, none of the Sunagakure shinobi dared to argue. Do not let her age fool you. Her methods were terrifyingly effective. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been called in as the village's savior in times of crisis. She's right, Maki said first. We can't touch the sea virus. That thing is far too dangerous. Maki had seen what the sea virus monsters could do. They turned people into mindless beasts and could spread the infection like a plague. No matter how you looked at it, that was a weapon they could not allow into Sunagakure. Other conscientious shinobi stepped forward to back him up, refusing to have anything to do with the virus. That united front forced the higher-ups to at least temporarily shelve their plans. Nobody wanted to risk public outrage. Jiraiya let out a small, relieved sigh and glanced toward the IKEA mall in the distance. He had smashed a hole in its roof earlier and gone inside, only to find an ordinary mall, no infinite space, no surreal pocket dimension. If not for the screen's feedback, he'd have thought he'd been duped. "It seems you can only enter that infinite space through the main entrance," he said after thinking it over. He hesitated to send a shadow clone in. He wanted to strike a deal with Doraemon. If Gaara and the others walked away with something that could suppress Konoha, that would be a disaster. Even the Sage of Six Paths' power, the strongest in the ninja world, felt pale next to Doraemon's reality-bending tech. Still, once you went inside, you couldn't be sure where or when the exit would appear. A clone could be trapped, vanish, or be uncontrollable in that unknown space, making any transaction meaningless. After a long moment, he pushed the idea aside. "Not right now," he decided. He turned to Chiyo. "There's something I need to tell you about that mall." On Skull Island, in the pirate world, Akainu and Kizaru were locked in a brutal fight with the Mutos. Even with the monster's ferocity, the Admiral's power made short work of most attacks, at least at first. Roars echoed from the island as larger Mutos burst out. The male Mutos first, then massive female Mutos twice their size. Seeing their kin slaughtered, the monsters went into a blind, furious rage. "Those bigger ones, are those adults?" Kizaru said, surprised. Akainu didn't care. "Kill them first," he barked. Magma burst from Akainu's body as he hammered the Mutos with fiery onslaughts. But these new, larger creatures were tougher than before. They swatted aside falling lava with deadly claws, taking hits on their thick hides and shrugging off damage that would have crippled lesser beasts. Cracks spidered across their skin, but the lava did not finish them. "Stronger than before," Akainu growled. Kizaru, hovering above, was about to intervene when a new threat burst from the island. Massive, crimson-winged creatures with pterodactyl-like heads, rodents, flooded into the sky, eager to break out into the open world. "This is trouble, Yasakani no Magatama," Kizaru muttered, then opened fire. Countless beams of condensed light rained down on the rodents, shredding wings and driving the monsters to a furious, desperate counterattack. The rodents gathered energy in their throats and unleashed searing, crimson heat rays. Kizaru dispersed into glittering fragments of light to evade the beams, then reconstituted above a rodent's wing. With lethal precision, he gathered power in his foot. "I won't let you all escape," he said and struck. The impact detonated against the wing, crippling it. He followed with another kick that destroyed the other wing, sending the rodent plummeting into the sea. The remaining rodents screamed and fired more heat beams, but Kizaru kept shifting and repositioning, avoiding a direct hit. Meanwhile, Akainu's battle on the ground grew fiercer. The magma-covered admiral pummeled the Mutos, but their raw strength repeatedly battered him, forcing him back and nearly hurling him into the ocean. The sight of a lava-formed human enraged the monsters further, and each strike made their claws sing with pain. "Every path for you ends in death," Akainu snarled, unleashing his trump card. He condensed magma and armament haki into his arm and slammed it forward, shaping the power into a colossal hellhound of molten rock that plunged into a Muto's gaping maw and tore it from the inside. The beast died instantly. The remaining Mutos roared in fury and shifted their tactics, spitting webs, gouging at the earth to create whirlpools of debris and bury Akainu under flying shards. Akainu readied another devastating attack, but his observation haki suddenly screamed a warning. His body froze. Beads of cold sweat sprang from his brow, his pupils constricted. A blue beam of light tore out of Skull Island like a meteor. It punched clean through a female Muto, kept burning without losing strength, and raced straight toward Akainu. He couldn't dodge in time. The beam struck him with a thunderous blast, hurling him into the air as magma and blood sprayed from his wounds. He plummeted toward the sea, his body broken and bleeding. Kizaru was already there. He snatched Akainu mid-fall, and with blinding speed, carried him back toward the one remaining Marine ship on the horizon. Admiral! The Marines who had been watching him trembled as their admiral was blown back. They rushed forward, only to recoil in shock at the severity of Akainu's injuries. Even an admiral taken down like that, could whatever had struck him be stronger than an admiral? Despair washed over the ranks. What are those faces for? I'm not dead yet, Akainu barked, glaring at them. He forced himself upright and spat a mouthful of clotted blood. That thing's called Godzilla. Its beam, it's terrifying. Kizaru, eyes fixed on the horizon, where Skull Island's outline shifted, saw Godzilla emerge. The giant lizard locked eyes with a nearby Muto, and as though drawn by instinct, the two natural enemies lunged at each other. Their clash eased some of the pressure on the Marines. Kizaru glanced up as huge winged beasts streaked past, unimpeded. "Oh, the big birds have all flown off. I wonder where they're headed," he said with his usual nonchalance. On Sabaudi Archipelago, the sudden appearance of colossal flying monsters, rodents, giant vultures, and others, had sent the civilians into panic. People ran screaming in all directions, terrified and dumbfounded. Akinu gritted his teeth, anger burning in him as he stared at Godzilla. He had rarely been bested like this, and he swore revenge. At Marineford, Sengoku and Garp watched the feed with alarm. Even the admirals were struggling. "So Skull Island is that formidable?" Sengoku said, his face grave. He had expected unknown monsters, but not necessarily anything on the level to threaten the admirals. "It looks like I have to go there myself." Garp rubbed his forehead. He'd assumed two admirals could handle whatever was on that island. Clearly, he'd underestimated it. "Dododo," he muttered. The Den Mushi on Sengoku's desk shrilled. He answered immediately. On the other end, Aokiji's calm voice came through. "This is Aokiji. I'll take it from here." Aokiji had already arrived with more than 20 warships and a flotilla of Marines. Even vice admirals aboard those ships had never seen creatures like Godzilla, nor the strange, looming island. Then the island itself erupted with sound, deep, violent roars. Monsters poured out, skeleton lizards, behemoths, mutos, Godzillas, King Kongs, Scillas, famous and terrible beasts appearing in numbers. The sight froze countless Marines in place. "Open fire! Don't let them out!" one vice admiral snapped, regaining his composure. More than 20 warships unleashed their broadsides, attempting to bombard Skull Island as if mounting a buster call. The cannonballs smashed into monstrous hides as if they were nothing, mere irritations. They had wildly underestimated the resilience of these beings. "None of you need to act. Let me," Aokiji said quietly, and before anyone could protest, he vanished from the flagship's deck. He reappeared on the sea not far from Skull Island and plunged his hands into the water. "Let me try Absolute Zero," he announced. Since learning the true limits of his power, he had been eager to see what Absolute Zero could do. Now, with the island's monsters threatening everyone, he was about to find out. "Akainu, Kizaru, give me a hand," he called. The two admirals needed no further explanation. In a wordless coordination born of long service together, they launched their powers skyward. "Meteor volcano!" Akainu roared, and towering columns of molten rock and magma flung toward the sea. "Yasakani no Magatama!" Kizaru chimed, scattering brilliant, destructive light orbs. Their attacks weren't aimed at the monsters on the island, but at the surrounding ocean. The combined onslaught turned the sea into a maelstrom. Giant waves rose like a natural catastrophe. Aokiji spread his arms. Ice Age. He unleashed Absolute Zero. The effect was immediate and absolute. Around him, time felt as if it slowed. The spray hanging in the air stopped falling and crystallized. Water turned to glassy ice. The very air seemed to solidify. Light itself shivered and fringed with frost. The freezing waves swept outward, climbing the sea and coalescing into a massive wall encircling Skull Island. The monsters reacted with panic. They hurled beams and boulders, flung themselves at the forming ice, tried anything to breach it. But Absolute Zero did not yield. Anything it touched froze instantly. The frost crawled along rays and projectiles alike, immobilizing the attackers as they came into contact with it. Seeing their assaults fail, the beasts switched tactics. They stopped attacking and focused on escape. If only the flying monsters could break free, they might carry word of this new world away. Rodins and oversized vultures launched toward the narrowing gaps, aiming for the last exits. They misjudged. An icy breath leaked from the edges of the forming cage. As they neared the opening, their feathers trembled, their limbs stiffened, and their wings slowed. The cold was gripping them too soon. Kizaru appeared at the gap, cutting them off and raining down Yasakani no Magatama to blast and scatter any that tried to force their way through. Aokiji poured more of his power into the seal, accelerating the freeze. In moments, the ice cage was complete, a glittering prison locking Skull Island away. None of the monsters inside could break out for the foreseeable future. Aokiji panted, a faint sheen of frost on his clothes. Large-scale freezing had always been taxing, but Absolute Zero took that strain to another level. Using it on such a scale left him breathless. This, Absolute Zero, it's no joke, he admitted. Maybe I should be more sparing with it. The Marines who had watched the operation couldn't contain their relief and admiration. 2 admirals had been put at a disadvantage, and Aokiji had stepped in and solved the worst of the problem by himself. Voices rose across the fleet. Admiral Kuzan, they cheered. Admiral Kuzan, Chapter 47, Devil Fruit, based on a monster. Aokiji, Aokiji. The Marines cheered, and Aokiji scratched the back of his head with an embarrassed smile. He wasn't used to this kind of attention. Well, Kuzan's popularity sure is high. If this keeps up, the next fleet admiral will be him for sure. Kizaru, standing nearby, let the remark hang in the air, whether on purpose or not, so Akainu would hear. Humph. If it weren't for his luck, Akainu's jaw tightened. If Aokiji hadn't absorbed that carnivorous ivy and gained Absolute Zero earlier, he thought he might have contained Skull Island himself. He bristled at the thought of Aokiji stealing the spotlight, and at how any reward Aokiji received would only widen the gap between them. Congratulations to Aokiji on successfully containing Skull Island, the electronic voice from the central screen intoned. Aokiji's lips curved in a small, modest smile when the broadcast continued. Garp's booming laughter filled the feed. Ha! As expected of Kuzan, my pupil. With you around, I can finally relax. Sengoku grinned ruefully. You were sweating a bit just a moment ago, weren't you? Garp waved a hand. What are you talking about? Worried? Me? On the same screen, Tony Stark watched with an expression of stunned fascination. Is that Absolute Zero? It looks like time itself stopped. As a scientist, Tony couldn't hide his awe at seeing the legendary thermodynamic limit manifest. Watching Aokiji freeze everything around him, it was more than mere cold. Motion itself seemed arrested. Incredible. Absolute Zero that can stop all motion. That's power enough to wipe anything out. Tony's eyes glittered with fanatic excitement. A force like this, even if it came from another world, was something his genius could not ignore. Jarvis, open a project file. Study Absolute Zero, he said aloud. For a moment he considered contacting the sorcerers of Kamartaj. Maybe the masters could accelerate his understanding. Natasha's analytical mind could help too. He shook his head dismissively, self-confidence reclaiming him. No, I'm Tony Stark. I don't need sorcerers or agents. With the Void Engine and my own intellect, I'll figure this out myself. In another corner of the multiverse, Jiraiya watched solemnly. Even after gaining the power of the Sage of Six Paths, he hadn't expected something like that. Absolute Zero made him uneasy. I can't underestimate it, he murmured. Moroboshi Dan's face went pale as cold memories stirred at the sight of Absolute Zero. Cold opponents are dangerous. I need to plan countermeasures, he muttered, tension running through him. And even Sun Wukong, beaming with excitement, pressed his face to the screen. Is that Absolute Zero? I wonder if I can fight it in Super Saiyan form. He was equal parts fascinated and eager to test himself. Then the voice on the screen spoke again. Now issuing rewards, 10 animal-type devil fruits modeled after monsters. 10 fruits of varying colors and patterns appeared out of thin air before Aokiji. As they manifested, a chill ran down his spine. He could almost see the shadowy likenesses of the monsters that had ravaged Skull Island earlier, as if they were watching him with hungry eyes. Aokiji instinctively stepped back and regarded the fruits with grave interest. Dragon Fruit, Mythical Zone, Godzilla form, the voice announced. Dragon Fruit, Mythical Zone, Rodent form. Spider Fruit, Mythical Zone, Muto form. Ape Fruit, Mythical Zone, Kong form. Lizard Fruit, Mythical Zone, Skeleton Lizard form. Elephant Fruit, Mythical Zone, Behemoth form. Fish Fruit, Ancient Zone, Death Swamp Megalodon form. Fish Fruit, Ancient Zone, Swamp Kraken form. Ox fruit, ancient zoan, lone reef bull demon form. Bird fruit, ancient zone, terrifying vulture's form. The electronic voice continued, clarifying each fruit's nature and effects. These devil fruits function like those from the One Piece world. Upon consumption, the user gains the power of the corresponding creature. Once awakened, they exhibit extraordinary vitality and strength far beyond ordinary limits. Also like devil fruits in that world, a person who has eaten one cannot consume a second. Attempts will result in bodily annihilation. However, these particular fruits are immune to seawater. Aokiji felt the implications crash over him. Devil fruit abilities that no longer feared the sea, an element that had been the single greatest weakness in their world, would change the balance of power entirely. If a user could dive into the ocean without losing their strength, their potential would be terrifying. News of such fruits would ignite wars. Even the emperors might mobilize to seize them. Kizaru, usually languid and unreadable, allowed surprise to flicker across his face. He understood the value immediately. They belong to our marines now? That will strengthen us. Akainu's mouth twitched into something like satisfaction. Anything that bolstered the marines was welcome, and as long as Aokiji didn't grow even more powerful, that pleased him as well. Garp chuckled fondly. Monster form devil fruits, huh? Interesting. Some of those are ancient Zoan types, so those creatures really existed long ago. Sengoku nodded. Who knows? Regardless, it's for the best. Garp, want one? Garp laughed heartily. No, thank you. I trust my fists. Dr. Strange, watching with a measured calm, added, So these are the fruits you mentioned that grant such extraordinary powers? Truly remarkable. Aokiji kept his eyes on the fruits, the memory of Godzilla's devastating ray, how it had even wounded Akainu, still vivid. Whatever these devil fruits were, they were not ordinary gifts. The world had just shifted in a way no one could ignore. A tiny fruit holds power beyond human imagination. It really is a magical item, Wang said. How does it taste? Naruto asked. It tastes like death, worse than poop, Luffy blurted. Don't say something so disgusting. Have you ever eaten poop? Naruto scolded. No, it's just a figure of speech, Luffy replied. I'm eating it, Tony Stark interjected. What crude humans, but that Aokiji is truly impressive, able to use water and air to freeze and form a cage. Absolute zero? Loki murmured, staring intently at the Frostmourne in his hand. As an ice giant, he already commanded freezing power. Combining that with the blade might let him match or exceed absolute zero, and perhaps even freeze on a massive scale to form cages. If only he could. His eyes flashed, and he glanced toward Odin's distant palace. Meanwhile, back on Skull Island. Wait, I remember you guys. Luffy, you were trapped on Skull Island before, right? Feng Yuan asked. Yeah, we're trapped? Ha-ha! Luffy laughed. Idiot, what's so funny? Nami snapped. She was furious, tears stinging her eyes, and she sent Luffy sprawling with a thunderous slap. Her iron fist, brimming with hockey of love, left several bumps on the rubber man's head. I told you to leave, to get out of here, and you wouldn't listen. Now look, we're stuck on this island. What are we supposed to do? Sanji, frantic to help, produced a pile of sweaters and hot drinks with a flourishing bow, hearts practically streaming from him. Miss Nami, Miss Robin, I brought sweaters and hot drinks. As long as I'm here, you won't catch a cold. I don't want these things, Nami snapped, even angrier. If this is how it is, we're accidentally locked in a cage and can't get out. What do we do? Zoro muttered, letting out a long sigh. The problem was serious. We're gonna die here, Usopp whimpered. He and Chopper huddled together, trembling and crying until they were soaked. Brook, who'd had experience being stuck in one place, tried to keep his spirits up. Actually, there might be a way out. All eyes turned to Robin, who was calmly sipping hot coffee. Robin, you're the best. Tell us. Nami pleaded, suddenly hopeful. Robin set down her cup and explained slowly. We can go to the Red Sea world, use a Red Sea disc to enter it, then take out the disc, put it in a glass, and return. That might let us get off Skull Island. For a moment, everyone gaped. The idea sounded risky, but it was at least a plan. What if we don't come back to this world? If we end up in another world, it could be a huge problem, Zoro cautioned. Any world is better than being stuck here, right? Robin said coolly. No way. If we go to another world, I won't find the great treasure and become Pirate King. Luffy jumped up, the first to object. Roar, roar! A roar then rolled across the island, shaking the ground. Heavy footsteps followed, each stomp a small quake. Conversation died instantly as everyone turned toward the sound. They didn't need to search long. Several colossal monsters were moving toward the island's center. Muto, Behemoth, Godzilla, King Kong, a skeleton lizard, and other gigantic beasts. Their bodies were marked with fresh wounds, proof they'd been in battle. Now their auras were terrifying, and their monstrous faces warned plainly, "Don't come near." Perhaps they were angry about being trapped here too. "They're here! The monsters are coming!" someone cried. The cowardly trio, Usopp, Chopper, and one more anxious crewmate, instantly clung to each other, tears streaming. "Run! Get us out of here!" Luffy ordered. Frankie slammed Sunny's controls, firing up auxiliary paddle wheels and gliding the ship across the river. They just scraped by against knife-ridged jackals and terrifying vultures. They weren't arrogant enough to tangle with monsters even an admiral would find troublesome. For now, getting away was the priority. "Sky Dragon Slayer magic!" Nami shouted as she concentrated. The air on Skull Island was unusually pure, making her magic stronger. Winds whipped and swirled at her command, while the Climatact burst with hot and cold bubbles. "Massive mirage!" Nami combined Sky Dragon Slayer power with her weather control to cast a giant mirage that cloaked the Sunny, making the ship effectively invisible. At the same time, she used the winds to speed the ship away. The monsters passed alarmingly close, but didn't appear to notice them. The crew breathed a little easier. "Hey, if we survive here and beat these monsters, how strong do you think we'll become?" Luffy asked, eyes bright with the idea that such a victory could make them powerful enough to no longer fear an admiral. The others fell silent, considering. Beep! Beep! A sudden alarm blared from the ship, red lights strobing. The last time an alarm like this had sounded, it had been about a Red Sea disk. What now? "Alert! Alert! Hostile human races are invading your world. Please prepare." The synthetic voice was grave, and the phrase "hostile human races" sent chills down their spines. What did that mean? Chapter 149, Visual Fantasy Beasts. At Kamartaj, the Ancient One watched the screen with a solemn expression. Hostile races, those with ill intent toward humanity, were nothing new. Dormammu was one example. She wondered what the hostile races of the SCP universe would be like. Were they anything like the Mimic Beast? "Hostile races invading? Is this going to start a war?" Fury asked. Sun Wukong leaned forward. "Is it a demon invasion like Piccolo?" Piccolo shrugged. "Who knows?" Moriboshidan frowned. "Maybe it's an alien invasion. We should be ready." Orochimaru smiled thinly. "An invasion by non-human races. How interesting. I wonder what research material will surface." "Don't stir trouble now, Orochimaru," Jiraiya scolded. As they talked, the screen changed. A new image filled the display. A grotesque, spider-like creature with a yellow body, far larger than any ordinary arachnid. The narrator's voice was flat and clinical. "The visionary beast," it said, "is a creature of extreme speed that can receive human brainwaves. It discerns a target's movements from their neural signals, even the slightest eye movement, and then moves silently at supersonic speeds. Many victims were tracked without ever knowing," the voice continued. "Because the visionary beast knows their every move, it is almost impossible to detect. Even in the presence of others, witnesses only ever see a faint afterimage in the corner of their eye. Those fleeting afterimages convinced some people they were losing their minds, which led to more mental illness and breakdowns." The screen cut to a clinical examination room. A balding, dark-eyed man sat across from a doctor, his voice shaking. "I'm telling you it's real. I keep seeing a strange shadow flicker in the corner of my eye. Every time I turn to look, it's gone. I thought it was an illusion, but it happens every day. Something is following me." His throat trembled, and his sentences came out in fragments. The doctor tried to calm him in a practiced professional tone. "Relax. These are hallucinations caused by stress. You work in software development and watch a lot of horror films. Your brain could be conjuring images. I'll prescribe medication and rest will help." "No, it's not an illusion," the man snapped, springing to his feet. Panic made his eyes fierce, and he began pointing wildly around the room. "He's there! He's there!" The nurse backed away. The doctor reached for his phone, wary. To them, there was nothing to see. The recorded report resumed in an impersonal voice. "Initially, our containment society dismissed these cases as ordinary mental illness. In a high-stress world, such complaints are common, and we could not investigate them all. But as reports rose, we realized something else was happening and collected surveillance footage. The footage replayed at 100th speed. Where the patient had been pointing, a shadow, 2 to 3 meters tall, flitted across the frame. Even slowed to a crawl, its movement was faster than an Olympic sprinter. It was clear that at normal speed, the creature moved with terrifying, virtually invisible speed. Once we saw this, the narrator said, we learned this creature not only moves at incredible speed, but also receives the brainwaves of nearby living beings. It senses their every motion and then slips into their visual blind spots with astonishing rapidity. It can pass through plain sight while still remaining undetected because it knows exactly where people are not looking. The visionary beast uses this method to torment targets, driving victims to mental collapse before devouring them. Our attempts to capture it were costly. Teams were deployed to cover every angle and block all visual blind spots, but the creature displayed strength and velocity beyond expectation. Even with vast manpower and resources expended, the species continues to lurk among humans. Because its movements cause people to think they are hallucinating, we named it the Visionary Beast. The room fell quiet as the recording ended. Diana's lips thinned. A creature that torments minds before killing. How hateful. Fury rubbed his temple. That speed and brainwave perception, it's terrifying. Moving so fast and silently. How? Garp blinked. Perceive other people's brainwaves? What does that mean? Tony Stark answered, dryly. It means reading thoughts. It knows what someone is thinking. Garp's eyes gleamed. Isn't that like observation hockey, sensing movement and then reacting? I've done that. Sengoku interjected. The issue is doing it without being detected, and by many observers at once. Orochimaru's interest was obvious. Fascinating, to drive people mad before eliminating them, an ideal assassin. Whoever dies would be assumed to have gone insane or killed themselves. No one would suspect a creature like this. Tsunade snapped. Don't entertain such dangerous ideas. Usopp whimpered. I hope creatures like that never show up here. Usopp's fear was genuine. He was already timid, and the thought of an invisible predator made his courage evaporate. In the Marvel contingent, Tony Stark was already considering countermeasures. You'd need weapons faster or more powerful than anything we fielded. It's hard to counter something that moves like that. In a small Mexican town, Thor took another sip of his drink and shook his head. If I still had my full powers, a lightning strike would sort that out. But I don't. I miss my divine strength. He drank more, troubled. Beside him, Xie Yun watched and shook his head. Thor had suffered a great loss. Without his powers, he was disheartened and dangerously willing to spend to drown his worries. If his spirits didn't lift soon, Thor would be drinking his way through his savings. Chapter 50, Sleeping Killers DC Universe. Diana stared at the screen with a serious expression. Are you fast? I'm not slow either. I'd like to see if you can fool me. She wasn't afraid. She trusted her speed. She'd even caught bullets before. If the visionary beast showed up, she wanted to see just how fast it could be. IKEA Mall. Doraemon watched the screen with a hollow look. He wasn't in his own world, and the thought of monsters invading Nobita's world made him miserable. Doraemon, still can't find the exit? Tsuneo sniffed, on the verge of tears. They'd tried again and again, searched every exit, but none led home. Every search drew attacks from hordes of employee monsters and mimic beasts. The danger was beyond imagination. Doraemon only shook his head helplessly. Seriously, a grown man shouldn't be so tearful, Tamari scolded, swatting Tsuneo on the shoulder. Nearby, Bruce Wayne sighed. He couldn't bear to think what would happen if Gotham were hit while he was somewhere else. The dark wingbat at his side squatted obediently and, sensing his master's mood, nuzzled him affectionately. Bruce knew the bat's sudden docility was thanks to the Momotaro rice ball. It was acting like a faithful dog, on the surface a good thing, but the idea gave him a chill and raised the hairs on his arms. I preferred your old, unruly self. He complained inwardly, then turned back to the screen with concern. The display wasn't showing where the visionary beast might appear. Instead, it switched to footage of an emaciated, hairless humanoid with razor-sharp claws. Dream Killer, the screen announced. Humanoid, invisible, silent. It can pass through a crowd without being noticed. It can only be seen with night vision goggles. The horror of this creature isn't only invisibility, the voice continued. It has a cruel sense of humor. Dream killers drain sleep. They absorb a victim's ability to fall asleep, gradually leaving the person unable to sleep at all. Even if the dream killer moves on, those victims will never sleep again. Many driven mad by sleep deprivation were preyed upon afterward. The dream killer watches them deteriorate into insanity, then devours the screaming, broken humans. Its cruelty rivals that of the visionary beast. Sunny, Skull Island. What? Deprive sleep? What kind of disgusting creature is that? Zoro, who loved sleeping as much as training and fighting, roared at the thought. Without sleep, he felt his life would lose meaning. Brook clicked his tongue. On the bright side, it would cure Zoro of sleeping too much. I don't want that, Luffy snapped, and Zoro immediately glared at him. Naruto watched the briefing grimly. That's monstrous, treating people like toys, he muttered, anger flashing in his eyes. Dragon Ball Universe. No way, not even sleep. How am I supposed to recover after training? Sun Wukong complained. He wasn't afraid of strength, but he hated threats that messed with the basic order of life. Piccolo shrugged. He didn't sleep much anyway. The screen switched again, this time to a creature that looked like a jellyfish. What's scary about a jellyfish? Barton asked. Fury replied sharply. Don't judge by looks. It's not ordinary. Narration. Sky jellyfish, an aerial predator. Its bell spans 2.5 meters, its tentacles over 25 meters. Beautiful in appearance, deadly in nature. Unlike sea jellyfish, its core is packed with eyes, an architecture of vision. Sky jellyfish hunt mammals, especially humans. They manipulate air currents to become effectively invisible while passing through crowds. Once they lock onto prey, they rush in, generate a powerful draft, and instantly suck the victim into their bell to be eaten. A week later, digested remains may fall from the sky. Many who've seen a sky jellyfish have already been marked. The whole process from sighting to being swallowed takes no more than 3 seconds. If you see one, run immediately. A clip played, transparent, faintly luminous jellyfish drifting down over a busy street. A man glimpsed it, barely registering before a violent gust yanked him into the air and into the jellyfish's bell. The predators flew away in a heartbeat. The victims disappeared in seconds. Witnesses were left baffled. Their speed, invisibility, and ability to stay airborne indefinitely make them among the most dangerous natural enemies, worse even than dream killers, the voice warned. Containment efforts are ongoing, but sky jellyfish are almost impossible to track. Sightings indicate a few still roam human cities. The room erupted in startled murmurs. By the description, a sky jellyfish allowed no time for resistance, no chance to strike back or flee. It was a terrifying prospect. Marineford. Sengoku eyed Garp with a smirk. Hey Garp, what would you do if you ran into one of these? Garp puffed his chest. One punch, right? I don't believe it's faster than me. Sengoku sighed and let the comment pass. Back in Konoha, Tsunade frowned. If a sky jellyfish appeared, finding it would be hard enough. Dealing with it seemed worse. She was confident she could destroy it with one punch, but the thought of so many disasters piling up made her heave a heavy sigh. The screen shifted on, the list of threats growing longer, and the multiverse braced as each world tried to imagine how to fight predators that preyed on the most basic human needs: sleep, sight, and the air itself. Chapter 151, Humanoid Monster. Orochimaru watched the creatures in the lab with keen interest, already imagining ways to use them in C-virus experiments and super beast synthesis. These creatures are very interesting. I wonder if I'll have a chance to capture them, he said, staring at the synthesized specimens and licking his lips. The next type of monster is considered by the Containment Society to be the most troublesome, a terrifying creature that poses a catastrophic threat to human survival. The synthesized voice from the screen cut in, and everyone straightened up. The previous 3 creatures had been alarming, but none had been introduced with words like that. What could possibly warrant such a description? The screen shifted and displayed an image of a bizarre humanoid. Humanoid monster. Its DNA contains detectable sequences from roosters, Masira, and humans, giving it a complex structure. Because it is bipedal and its appearance somewhat resembles a human, it is called the humanoid monster. What the hell? How is that thing even remotely human? It's only bald like Krillin and Tien Shinhan. Hey, that's rude. I want to know what abilities this creature has that could threaten humanity. The humanoid monster does not possess the silent, extreme speed of the visionary beast, nor the invisibility and sleep-stealing powers of the dream killer, nor the hunting skills of the sky jellyfish, the electronic voice explained, prompting puzzled looks. Compared to the others, this sounded weak. However, it has an extremely troublesome capability. It will relentlessly attack any mammal, especially humans, within a 600-meter radius. An immature humanoid monster can reach speeds of 25 kilometers per hour. Mature specimens move even faster. Each individual is capable of reproduction. They form eggs internally and lay them. This reproductive capacity has no upper limit, and their eggs hatch in under an hour. The humanoid monster's reproduction is phenomenally fast. The Containment Society estimated that a single humanoid monster can lay 30 eggs in an hour. The eggshells are extremely tough. Even machine gun fire or strong acids can barely destroy them. The hatchlings are aggressively predatory from birth. Given sufficient food, they can mature and reproduce in half a day. One humanoid monster can produce 30 offspring in an hour. After half a day, those 30 can produce 900. After another half day, there can be 27,000. In less than a week, the number could exceed 100 million, posing a terrifying threat to human survival. A chill ran through the room. The reproductive rate and speed of maturation were horrifying. Add to that the monster's preference for attacking humans, and the implications were catastrophic. If the screen wasn't exaggerating, in 10 days, billions of humanoid monsters and countless eggs could exist, enough hostile mouths to wipe out humanity given time. Everyone felt their scalps prickle. Nami, what kind of monster is this? It reproduces by itself, and so fast, and it's disgusting. Sun Wukong, laying eggs to reproduce? Sounds a bit like Piccolo. Hey, don't drag me into this. This is no joke. A creature that feeds on humans and other mammals and can multiply like that could annihilate most species. Is that so? But they sound very weak. Don't forget civilians are the majority. That makes them a huge threat. If we don't find a way to eliminate them quickly, the danger will never end. My goodness, if these appear, I'd have to use satellite thermal imaging to find them immediately. Fury. Can that lock onto the eggs? Probably not. Strange. Would the Ancient One have a way? That wouldn't be difficult. I have several spells that can track objects. That's truly reliable. Now let's predict the universes where these creatures will appear. The room quieted at the announcement. The screen spoke again, and the forecast spread across several universes. In the Marvel universe, Dream Killer will appear in a S.H.I.E.L.D. experimental building, and Visionary Beast will appear on a planet in outer space. In the DC universe, a humanoid monster will appear in Gotham City. In the Dragon Ball universe, a humanoid monster will appear in West City. In the Doraemon universe, Dream Killer will appear. In the Ultraman universe, Sky Jellyfish will appear. In the One Piece universe, Sky Jellyfish will appear on an uninhabited island, and Visionary Beast will appear at Marineford. In the Naruto universe, Visionary Beast will appear in the Cloud Village, Sky Jellyfish will appear in the Hidden Mist Village, and Humanoid Monster will appear in Iwagakure. The predictions caused unrest as alarms rippled through the assembled group. Jiraiya. What? Other ninja villages are involved too? A humanoid monster is appearing in our world? This is a massive problem. Chapter 152. Emergence of Hostile Races. Damn it! Humanoid monsters have appeared in Gotham, and I'm not even there. If you asked people which race they least wanted to face, many would pick humanoid monsters. Their reproductive capacity was terrifying. No egg could be left behind. Finding those eggs was even worse. They couldn't be sensed by normal means and required enormous energy, resources, manpower, and time. Yet they had appeared anyway. The person most annoyed by that was Bruce Wayne. He was stuck inside an IKEA mall and couldn't protect Gotham. More employee monsters are coming, someone shouted. And those mimic beasts. Take them out quickly. The IKEA mall was in night mode. Tonight, because an employee monster's arm had been mixed in with recovered supplies, thousands of employee monsters, large and small, swarmed in, some towering over 30 meters. Mimic beasts were causing even more chaos among them. In the past, with only a few hundred defenders and no thermal weapons, the nearby market town would have fallen. But with Doraemon, Gaara, and Bruce Wayne on site, they had a fighting chance. With their help, the market town was effectively impregnable. Its defenses would not be breached. At that moment, Tsuneo, Jian, and Tamari returned, looking discouraged. "It's no use," Tsuneo said quickly. "The exit we found doesn't lead back to our world. It opens into 20th century Europe." "Heavens," Tamari muttered. "How are we supposed to get home?" No one knew how long they'd be stranded. "Oh, when we came back, we saw employee monsters everywhere," Jian added. "The market town we passed yesterday was destroyed. There was a pile of mimic beasts feeding on the corpses." Shizuka turned to Doraemon anxiously. "Doraemon, how can we get back?" Doraemon looked just as downcast. Not only could he not return now, but the other world was dangerous. Nobita alone couldn't handle SCP objects. If only Dorami were here, he sighed, wishing his sister could help protect Nobita and deal with those anomalies. Back in Gotham, Bruce was on the phone. "Diana, can I ask you to help protect the city?" "I'm already on my way," Diana replied. "This isn't just your city. It affects the whole world." "Thank you. I'll repay you. Go to Wayne Enterprises and find Lucius. Tell him my name. Use all of Wayne Tech to locate the mimic beasts and prepare the police." "I don't like getting involved with your corporate machinery," Diana said, "but it looks like I have to." Fully armed, Diana raced toward Gotham, hoping to arrive before the situation worsened. Dragon Ball Universe. "All right, then let's go and eliminate those humanoid monsters," Sun Wukong said, clenching his fists. Even if there were no overwhelmingly strong foes, he had to act to protect humanity. "But do those monsters have ki? And how do we find their eggs?" Krillin asked. The monsters themselves were one thing, the eggs were another. Ki couldn't detect them. "Leave that to me," Kami's voice replied in their minds. He could see everything on Earth and would guide them to the trouble spots. "Got it, Kami. Let's move," Sun Wukong said, and took off at once. Piccolo, Son Gohan, Krillin, Yamcha, and Teen Shinhan followed close behind. "I never thought Piccolo would fight alongside us," Teen Shinhan said in surprise. "Humph, don't get the wrong idea," Piccolo replied coldly. "I just don't want these creatures interfering with my plans for Earth. Once these SCP anomalies are handled, you're next." Sun Wukong simply smiled. "Oh, right. Bulma lives in West City. We should notify her too." "2 days ago I called her," Krillin said. "She said she found a badly injured person and was nursing them at home. Reckless." "Probably because you were flirting with someone else again," Yamcha said with a smirk. "She's getting back at you." Krillin was speechless. The bickering lightened the tension as they headed toward West City under Kami's guidance. Marvel Universe S.H.I.E.L.D. "Phew, at least the creature on that alien planet isn't our problem," Nick Fury muttered, then looked at the intelligence feed. The Dream Killer's abilities were strange but manageable. Then his eyes landed on a map of an experimental facility and his pupils shrank. "No, that site has an old 20th century relic inside it," Fury snapped. "If anything happened to that thing, it would be catastrophic." "Natasha, Hill, go, notify everyone. Night vision, full combat readiness," Fury ordered, then rushed toward the experimental building. "Hey, Nick Fury," Tony Stark said, appearing on a tactical feed. "That looks like your S.H.I.E.L.D. experimental site. Any secrets in there that need daylight exposure?" "Not your concern," Fury shot back. "Relax, I'm here to help. But where was that visionary beast on that alien planet? Asgard." Odin answered, "It is not here, nor on any nearby world." After learning a visionary beast had appeared on a distant planet, Odin had Heimdall search. The beast wasn't in nearby space, it was farther away. That was both good and bad. Good because Asgard was clear, bad because it meant the creature was far, and the reward was slipping away. Heimdall continued his search. Naruto Universe. Damn it, they showed up in other ninja villages too. 3 of them. Tsunade cursed. Jiraiya was scrambling. "I'm dispatching shadow clones to alert the other villages. I hope it's not too late." "Go, you perverted hermit," Naruto yelled. "Especially those humanoid monsters. Don't let them keep breeding." "I know that," Jiraiya snapped back. He split into multiple shadow clones, sending 2 immediately to the Hidden Mist and the Hidden Cloud, while he headed for Iwagakure. He didn't yet know how many humanoid monsters had appeared. He could only hope there was still time. Chapter 153, Whitebeard Pirates Marineford. It's right here with us. That saves us the trouble. Garp boomed, cracking his knuckles with excitement. He couldn't wait to see what these so-called visionary beasts could do. But which uninhabited island is the sky jellyfish on? Sengoku asked, worry creasing his brow. There were countless uninhabited islands in the world. Even if they knew what it looked like, finding the right one would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Sengoku stared at the monitor, intent on finding a distinguishing feature of the island. Instead, something on the screen made his face fall. My heavens, how can he be there? Sengoku's voice went tight. Garp, about to turn away, saw Sengoku's expression and peered at the screen. What he saw made his own features harden. Beside the uninhabited island, over a dozen ships floated, each flying a pirate flag. The most prominent bore a white crescent-shaped mustache. Anyone in the world would recognize it. The Whitebeard Pirates. Whitebeards involved? This is serious, Garp muttered, his merriment gone. The danger wasn't just the object. On the monitor, the Whitebeard Pirates and several affiliated crews were holding a raucous feast on the island. Lifting his goblet with a roar, Whitebeard called, "My son's a toast!" The crew answered with a thunder of clinking cups and deep drinking gulps. "My lord, don't drink so much. Your health isn't good," the nurse scolded, helpless. "Fool," Whitebeard snorted, smiling faintly. "Alcohol is the best medicine." He thought little of longevity. He would do as he pleased. But the smile vanished mid-sip. Marco, Jozu, and Vista noticed his sudden shift. "My lord, what's wrong?" Marco asked. Whitebeard's gaze went to the sky. His observation hockey warned him of a malice from above. The captain stiffened, feeling it too. The winds picked up, and in the next second, a fierce vortex came screaming down toward them. A tornado ripped at Whitebeard, but he was no easy mark. He swung his great sword, sending out a storm of blade energy that shredded the funnel. Marco's eyes widened. "It's a sky jellyfish!" More vortexes formed. Not everyone could react in time. Dozens were swept upward, swallowed whole by floating, translucent creatures. Those that managed to hang on watched in horror as the jellyfish rose away, bellies full. Whitebeard's face darkened. "You ate my sons? You can't leave after that." He slammed both fists into the air, cracking the very atmosphere. Impact waves radiated out, shaking the sky. When the waves collided with the incoming group of jellyfish, many of them were crushed into mist. Whitebeard showed no joy at their destruction. Even weak members were his sons, and the loss left him wretched. "My lord." Marco moved to offer what comfort he could, but then he saw more. Emerging from every part of the island, sky jellyfish multiplied, and these were far larger, some several times the size of the first wave. "Ha ha ha!" Whitebeard laughed, a sound edged with bloodlust. "Come on then, try me. I'm in no mood to be merciful." He bristled with fury, the like of which hadn't been seen in a long time. Back at Marineford, the situation on screen left the admirals no time for anything else. A flustered Marine burst in to report. "Report, my lord. According to our monitors, Whitebeard is fighting something unknown." "We know," Garp waved him off, but then a sudden flicker from the corner of his eye made him stiffen. He unleashed his observation hockey. "Garp, did you see it?" Sengoku had noticed too. "It's behind you." Garp spun, punching so hard his fist blew through the wall. The figure had vanished, but the after image told Sengoku enough. The visionary beast had dodged Garp's blow. Dodging Garp's fist meant this thing was far faster and more dangerous than they'd thought. "Wait, there's more than one." Sengoku's hockey reached farther, and the truth settled on them both. At some unknown moment, more than 20 visionary beasts had appeared around the area, shadowing Marines discreetly. Meanwhile, in the Leo universe, Moroboshi Dan was already mobilizing his team. "Everyone, we've received intelligence. Mysterious creatures, sky jellyfish, have appeared on this street. They're man-eating monsters that live in the sky. It sounds unbelievable, but it's true. We must eliminate them." The soldiers bristled and obeyed the captain's steady authority. For veterans who'd faced all manner of monsters, the words carried weight. Beep boop, the alarm cut through the air. A new voice cried out, "Oh no, something's rapidly approaching. Ah, it hit the base!" Alarms howled. Across the worlds, the calm of that day ruptured by the arrival of creatures that should not be, and everywhere, men readied for a fight none of them had expected. Chapter 154, Disc creatures that arrived early. A giant, milky white, light bulb-shaped creature slammed into the Mac base, its dome splitting and dozens of red tentacles whipping out to coil around the complex. Alarms screamed, sparks flew, and entire sections of the base were torn apart. It was the black alien's invasion weapon, the saucer beast Silverbloom. A monster, Moriboshi Dan shouted, staring up through a ruptured ceiling at the writhing tentacles. At a moment like this, he never expected to face such a thing. Everyone, get into the Mac fighters and evacuate the base now. Move. Dan's order was decisive. Team members scrambled for the jets. Only Dan and Feng Yuan stayed behind. Captain, I'll handle this monster, Feng Yuan said. Those sky jellyfish need your psychic power to locate. Leave this to me. Feng Yuan's lion-like eyes flared, and he transformed into Leo. Immediately, he grabbed Silverbloom and heaved with all his strength, forcing the beast away from the base. Kaioken, he shouted, pushing his power higher. The extra energy let him yank Silverbloom clear so the fighter jets could take off. Dan boarded his plane and fled too. Unlike the original timeline, most of the Mac team escaped. Only a few who couldn't get away in time were lost. From a distance, the survivors watched the base collapse into ruin. Silverbloom, eliminate Leo, and then 7, roared the black alien commander from a rooftop. He'd been worried ever since 7 appeared, and humanity gained a terrifying weapon like Gantras. He'd planned an early strike to destroy the base before they could transform, but he had failed. Furious, he raised a crystal orb and called more saucer beasts into the sky. Absorba, Satan Moa, Nova. 3 more saucer beasts streaked in, looking dreadful as they closed in on Leo with every intention of overwhelming him. Leo, still locked with Silverbloom and riding the Kaioken boost, was ready to finish the fight, but the 3 new attackers ambushed him and knocked him hard to the ground. Before he could recover, the 4 saucer beasts slammed into him at once. Sparks flew from his body as he struggled to parry the onslaught, crying out with every blow. Then crimson beams sliced down from the sky and struck the saucer beasts, forcing them back. Gantras had descended. When the giant robot landed, dust and debris exploded outward. It rose like a war god, slow, inexorable. Gantras, support Leo. Dan barked into the controller in his fighter. Gantra's red eyes glowed as it strode forward and fired its fists like cannon shots at Absorba and Satan Moa. Absorba failed to dodge and was sent hurtling away. Satan Moa used its speed to evade, then slammed into Gantras, throwing the robot back a few paces. Gantras answered by grabbing Satan Moa in a crushing hold, slamming it down in an over-the-shoulder throw, then pummeling it with beam fire until its flesh splattered and its screams faded. With Gantras engaging 2 of the beasts, Leo rushed the remaining pair. He formed his hands into blades and cut into them with renewed ferocity. Since adapting to Kaioken, he'd trained relentlessly. His strength had surged and his stamina deepened. Facing 2 powerful saucer beasts alone, he kept up without falling behind. How impressive, one of the Mac team members breathed, watching the fierce duel. We'll hold them, Dan said over the comms. Find those sky jellyfish I mentioned. His words were barely out when screams rose nearby. Dan's face tightened, and he led several people to investigate. On the shattered ground, a handful of civilians sat trembling, panting with terror. What happened? Dan demanded. We were running and a tornado dropped from the sky, a middle-aged woman stammered, pointing upward. It lifted several people, then they disappeared. Everyone trained their guns skyward, but saw nothing at first. There's nothing there, one of the team muttered. Dan didn't trust the empty air. He wasn't fully human. His vision picked up things others couldn't see. Floating in the currents above were a cluster of jellyfish-shaped creatures, hiding in the airflow. They had noticed Dan staring and began to descend. Shoot, Dan ordered. His response was instantaneous. Rapid fire spat into the tunnel of air. Bullets shredded a few of the jellyfish. Limp bodies fell. The rest, enraged by the loss of their kin, dropped their disguise and plunged downward. They created tight vortexes, tornadoes, that reached into the crowd, snatching people into the air. Everyone, be careful. They make tornadoes and will suck people up. Dan warned as he fired again and directed civilians to flee. The squad moved to shepherd the survivors away from the whirling traps. From his distant perch, the black commander watched the sky jellyfish with a puzzled expression. A smirk crossed his face. Whatever their origin, if they targeted Earthlings and Ultraman, they served his purpose. Half a world away in the Naruto universe's Cloud Village, the fourth Raikage, I, had just started a meeting with the Jonin and elders when he abruptly froze, stopping everyone with a lifted hand. The others exchanged confused looks. This Raikage was rarely unsettled. I's brow tightened. His sixth sense, sharpened by years of battle, told him something alive nearby was watching. No matter how he scanned the room, he could not find the source of the gaze. Chapter 155, Situations of Each Ninja Village. My lord, are you imagining things? Xie asked, puzzled. Imagining things? Perhaps. My lord muttered. He had been staring at the corner of the wall as if he'd seen something move. Did I just see that? He frowned. As his gaze shifted, another blur flashed past. This one raced between several people, yet strangely none of them seemed to notice. Hey, did any of you see something fly by? He shouted. Huh? No, they answered, confused. No one had noticed anything. Just a shadow flitting past. Samui spoke up then, serious. Like my lord, she had caught a glimpse of something. You saw it too? I thought I was tired and seeing things, 2 or 3 shadows at the edge of my vision. What, more than one? My lord's expression hardened. Suddenly he seized the long table with both hands, arcs of lightning crackling over his skin. With a brutal tug, the 10-meter table shattered into splinters, fragments scattering like a torrential downpour. People screamed and dove for cover, covering their heads, bewildered and terrified. My lord glared around, lightning dancing constantly across him. He caught sight of a streak of motion at the corner of his eye and vanished from his spot. He rematerialized mid-strike and threw a punch. The blow, powered by explosive lightning, smashed the floor and walls to pieces. It got away. He realized whatever it was could dodge a full-speed attack. Vanishing again, he began moving at a speed that whipped up a fierce localized storm through the conference hall. Ah! Shadow, my lord, what are you doing? The other Jonin were pinned by the gusts and lashing winds, unable to move, their senses muddled. You can't see it, but you'll know soon enough. My lord unleashed a barrage of strikes, shredding the building. Holes punched through beams and walls, and people fled in panic. When roughly a third of the structure had been wrecked, he landed, and several small corpses fell at his feet. They were strange creatures, visionary beasts, whose bodies had been torn apart by his onslaught. My lord frowned at them. These beasts could latch onto a target's thought waves to move at incredible speed, but my lord had become too fast. Even when they tracked his mind, they could no longer keep pace and had been killed. What are these things? New summons? Orochimaru's sea virus monsters? He muttered, annoyed and angry at being invaded under his nose. Their speed was close to his own. If any other ninja, even elite Jonin, had faced them, they might have been overwhelmed. The thought made his face grow grim. Shadow, my lord! Other ninja rushed over and froze at the sight of the bodies. When did these appear? They asked. Don't come closer. My lord snapped. Before anyone could react, those who had run in were suddenly pierced through their chests. It happened so fast, no one could see the attacker. All they could do was feel themselves slipping down. Gurgling cries filled the room. At the same time, an eerie chorus, thick with murderous intent, seemed to ring from nowhere. Woo! A bunch of scoundrels! My lord scanned the room. After images darted back and forth through his vision. Trying to avenge your companions? Then all of you die here! He roared and unleashed a roar of lightning that erupted from his entire body. The storm intensified. Meanwhile, in the hidden mist village, Mei Terumi had been trying to get some sleep. In her chamber, 3 invisible intruders, the dream killers, moved about. These pale, emaciated creatures, taller than most humans and with clawed hands, fed on drowsiness. The more they absorbed, the more they croaked and laughed, as if savoring the torment of those who could not sleep. Mei, a shadow-level kunoichi, immediately sensed something wrong and opened her eyes. The 3 dream killers did not panic. They wore unnatural smiles, confident in their invisibility. Mei tilted her head. Invisible, huh? Then what if it's like this? She smiled and unleashed one of her Kekkei Genkai. Boil release, skilled mist technique. A dense white mist billowed from her mouth. The room's temperature shot up. The boil release corroded everything it touched. Metal and fabric steamed and sizzled. A high, piercing scream cut through the air as the dream killers were stripped of whatever disguise they had been using. Once merely gaunt and strange, they were now grotesque, rotting flesh and exposed bones where skin and muscle had been eaten away. May's eyes widened despite herself. These things were not human. They lunged at her, claws flashing. "Water release! Water dragon bullet!" someone called out, but May was already faster. She moved with lethal grace, using precision ninjutsu to blast the three dream killers down the corridor and out through the open door. The force ejected them and shattered whatever advantage their invisibility had given them. The disturbance drew other ninja to investigate. They arrived, baffled. "Water shadow, my lord! What happened?" Chojuro hurried in, breathless. "I don't know," May said, steadying herself. She noticed several of the gathered ninja had dark circles beneath their eyes. "Why are so many of you exhausted?" "We were supposed to sleep after returning from the mission," one murmured, rubbing his face. "But we just couldn't fall asleep." Chojuro, yawning but unable to sleep, shook his head. A cold prickling at May's neck told her someone had been watching in the dark. Putting the pieces together, she acted without hesitation. "Everyone, get out the window, now! Boil release!" She activated the boil release again, forcing the cloud of scalding mist through the room. Chojuro and the others, trusting her, followed, leaping through the window as ordered. Chapter 156, Super Strong Breeding of Humanoid Monsters. Ah! Ah! When the highly corrosive mist spread down the corridor, a chorus of agonized screams erupted. The dream killers, about a dozen of them, had been corroded so badly their bones showed through. They fixed furious stares on Mai Terumi and surged forward as if to rip her apart. "Heh, all of you, go die," Mai Terumi sneered. Meanwhile, in Iwagakure, the scene was chaos. The village, usually peaceful, had suddenly been struck by a wave of deaths. Villagers, Jinin, and even some Chunin had fallen. Eyewitnesses described a group of strange, nauseating creatures that had appeared and attacked people. The Jonin were immediately dispatched to investigate. "Is this thing attacking the village? What kind of summon is that?" one Jonin muttered. "I've never seen a summoned beast this disgusting," another replied, staring at several humanoid corpses strewn on the ground. They had never encountered anything like these creatures before. "No matter what, if they mess with Iwagakure, they'll pay," the first Jonin said through gritted teeth. "Look," one Jonin spotted a humanoid monster dragging a Genin's corpse toward a large warehouse and gave chase. Inside, they killed the creature without hesitation, but the Genin was already dead. Anger flared in them. "Damn things. If there are more, we'll wipe them out," one Jonin vowed, clapping his hands to gather chakra and radiate deadly intent. As they searched, another Jonin found something strange. Over 100 large, unfamiliar eggs stacked in the warehouse. "Are these the eggs of those monsters? They're trying to breed here? Go to hell," the other snarled. They unleashed ninjutsu on the eggs, causing a series of explosions. Confident that the shells couldn't withstand their attacks, they left without a second thought. But then came the sound. Crack, 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 and the cries of newly hatched monsters. They turned to see more than 100 humanoid creatures, roughly 1.2 meters tall, emerging from shattered shells. Black, expressionless pupils fixed on the two Jonin. Then, impossibly, the small monsters formed hand seals and launched a variety of ninjutsu at them. "What?" the Jonin shouted, scrambling backward to dodge. As they leapt for the doorway, they felt a sudden impact behind them and spun around. Dozens of 2-meter-tall humanoid monsters stood there now, blocking their escape, eyes gleaming with menace. "Ah! Ah!" Iwagakure's crisis was only one front. In another world, in Marineford, the threat had spread. Giant punching, ideologically different, the visionary beasts were tearing through the marine base. Rumble, rumble. Admiral Garp and Fleet Admiral Sengoku were at the center of the defense. Only by coming into direct contact did they learn just how dangerous the visionary beasts were. Their speed was astonishing, and when detected by observation haki, they could apparently use a similar sensory power to read thoughts and move a step ahead. That meant even fighters as quick as the beasts found their moves anticipated and countered. "Die!" Garp roared as he and Sengoku finally managed, at great cost and after massive destruction, to take down 5 of the beasts. "Hey, Sengoku, do you think the Gorosei will reprimand us for tearing Marineford apart?" Garp joked, fists clenched, clearly itching to use overwhelming force. Don't even think about using the Ox Talisman at full power to demolish Marineford, Sengoku snapped, immediately understanding what Garp had in mind. Garp shrugged unamused, then grew serious again. This is bad, he said. The problem wasn't having to face the visionary beasts' attacks. Garp could handle that, but their speed and anticipatory senses made them maddening. He wanted to lure them to an open area and strike, but the celestial dragons lived nearby, and bringing the fight to open ground could endanger them. The thought infuriated him. Damn it, he muttered, and abandoned caution. If he couldn't lure them safely, he'd use every trick he had to close the distance. The result was even more devastation across Marineford, leaving Sengoku's face grim. And in Gotham City, yet another world, the humanoid monsters had already begun their rampage. They spread through neighborhoods, devouring people to reproduce. The police responded, but conventional firearms did little. Criminals used the chaos to their advantage, and things spiraled. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Suddenly, beams of light crashed from the sky, cutting through entire city blocks and incinerating the humanoid monsters within them. The terrified citizens looked up to see a powerful figure standing on a tall building, a shield strapped to one arm, a sword in each hand. It was Wonder Woman, looming like a goddess. Thanks, Lucius. Your satellite recon is invaluable, Diana said, wearing a pair of high-tech sunglasses developed by Wayne Enterprises. The glasses linked to satellite scans and could detect humanoid monsters hiding in any corner. Inside Wayne Tower, Lucius Fox guided the feed. You're welcome, but I never expected Bruce's new friend to be this strong, Lucius said, still trying to process the night's events. Earlier that evening, Diana had broken into his house, told him an alien-like invasion was underway, and even confided Bruce Wayne's identity as Batman as a sign of trust. So he had helped, skeptically, with satellite support. Now his scans were proving essential. Can you find their eggs? Diana asked. I analyzed the egg you brought, Lucius replied. They only show up on thermal when they're about to hatch. Otherwise, they're invisible to our scans. Better than nothing, Diana said, already heading to the next hotspot. She moved through the city, cutting down monsters and quelling criminals who tried to take advantage of the turmoil, while also dealing with mimic beasts lurking in the shadows. Satellite data suggested the number of humanoid creatures was terrifying, too many to be a single initial invasion. Reproduction was clearly underway. Diana raised the Oath of Victory sword, its blade shimmering. The light energy of this blade can do many things, she murmured, eyes hard with battle intent. Let's see what else it can do. Chapter 157. Two people who are very sleepy. S.Shield's experimental facility had gone to a level 1 alert. Gunfire echoed continuously through its corridors. The moment Fury learned about the Dreamkiller incursion, he cut into the building's systems and ordered the highest alert, security teams on night vision optics and moving to engage. At first, everyone was stunned. How could such things even exist? Then they put on their goggles and saw them, and the gravity of the situation hit. The guards opened fire in terror. When they realized the Dreamkillers could be killed, they calmed enough to fall back and form coordinated counterattacks. The creatures' greatest advantages were invisibility and their ability to feed off sleepiness. They couldn't stand sustained heavy fire. Still, they were numerous and vicious. Some were sharp enough to slice through bulletproof vests and impale people. Worse, they could grab and use firearms. With researchers and non-combatants everywhere, the security teams were stretched thin. The whole fight had reached a stalemate. In a secure room deeper in the complex, a man slept on a cot, oblivious to the chaos beyond. They called him the Old Popsicle, Steve Rogers, dug up not long ago after decades frozen in the Arctic. He wasn't alone. 3 Dreamkillers hovered nearby, eyes fixed on him and drooling. They fed on their victims' sleepiness and life force, and Steve's decades-long slumber was like vintage wine to them. They couldn't resist. They began to greedily drain him. God damn it! They found Steve! Fury spat when the surveillance feed showed what was happening. On the Quinjet, Fury barked orders at Hill in the pilot seat. Can't you go any faster? Director, we're already at max, Maria Hill shot back through the intercom. I'm pushing it. Natasha didn't wait. I'm not staying on the plane, she snapped, yanking the Quinjet's door open and launching herself out. The sudden wind nearly knocked Fury off his seat. "Natasha, close the door." Inside the room, Steve's eyes finally fluttered open after the long sleep. "Where am I?" he muttered, sitting up and taking in his surroundings. S-Shield had tried to recreate the era he'd known, down to the furnishings, but the radio announcer on the shelf was wrong for the time. "I went to see that ball game," he said, confused, then grew alert. The super soldier serum had sharpened his senses. Something in the room made his instincts spike. The dream killers assumed his ordinary eyes couldn't see them and kept feeding. That was a mistake. A blood-soaked guard stumbled in, wearing night vision goggles and seeing the creatures in the green glow. He screamed and opened fire. Steve dove as bullets stitched the air where he'd been. In an instant, the creatures sprang from the bed area, 3 grotesque humanoids riddled with round holes. The dream killers, having their feast interrupted, turned and tore into the guard. The gun clicked empty. He never got a chance to reload before 3 claws raked through him. The guard collapsed, dead. Steve's head spun. He'd woken to this? Was this a Hydra setup? The creatures turned toward him, hungry and enraged. "Whatever you are, I'll make you regret that," Steve growled. He moved like a soldier, fast, precise, relentless. The room filled with the sounds of close combat, fists, impact, the tearing of flesh. When it was over, Steve stepped back into the corridor. One dream killer's neck had been snapped, another's skull caved in, the third impaled by a companion's claw. With super soldier strength, he'd taken them down. He stared down the unfamiliar hallway, questions crowding his head. He had no memory of these hallways at all. Then a voice crackled over a walkie nearby. "Requesting backup. I've been ambushed. I'm seriously injured. Can't move. Someone help." Steve picked up the radio and answered on instinct. "On my way." He didn't know the facility's layout or the full situation, but he'd been a soldier his whole life. Help was what you did. Up in flight, Tony Stark was watching the same feed. He'd seen the image and felt a jolt of recognition. "Is that the soldier my father kept talking about?" he said aloud as he hovered in his suit, eyes on the screen. Steve was alive and hadn't aged. Tony frowned at Fury's secrecy for keeping him in the dark, then accelerated to cover more ground while he scanned other worlds for trouble. On one of the screens, Tony's HUD pulled up the Doraemon world. He narrowed his eyes. "Hey, Doraemon, something's happened to your Nobita." But Tony called into the channel. On the other end, Doraemon was in the thick of fighting monsters with everyone else and didn't immediately look up from the chaos. Chapter 158, Elementary School Students Who Make the Sleeping Killer Collapsins. That night at the IKEA Mall, chaos reigned. More employee monsters surged into Returns Town like a rising tide, far more than before. Doraemon had personally used his gadgets to inspect the recycled materials and found no severed employee monster parts, so nobody knew why the attacks had intensified. In the last 2 nights, the invaders had swelled into the thousands, ranging in size from small to dozens of meters tall. Returns Town, by contrast, held only 30 people. Ever since Doraemon and the others had found the exit, some people were determined to leave, even if it meant going to a different universe. Anything seemed better than staying in this nightmare. A few preferred to stay, either out of stubbornness or because they thought moving to an unknown place was pointless. With such a disparity in numbers, they had no chance. If not for Doraemon, Bruce Wayne, Gaara, Tamari, and Kankuro, Returns Town would have fallen long ago. Gaara wrapped a sandstorm around a large cluster of employee monsters, holding them back. "Are there so many because they sensed we're in danger?" Kankuro guessed. "It's very possible," Tamari replied. She then glanced at Doraemon and Bruce Wayne, who were both staring intently at a screen. "Hey, what are you two looking at?" "You wouldn't understand unless you could see the screen," Bruce said, his face pale. "Our world is in serious trouble." Bruce looked grim. He feared Gotham might be facing new disasters. Diana was there, but he wasn't on the ground, and that made him anxious. Doraemon clutched his head, kicking himself. He should have woken Nobita before leaving and given him some gadgets to protect himself. Now he could only watch helplessly as Nobita got into danger. Doraemon banged his forehead and scolded himself for being foolish. Back in Doraemon's world, Nobita slept on, oblivious. 3 invisible dream killers hovered around him, greedily siphoning off his sleep. Nobita was the strongest sleeper in this world, His drowsiness was extraordinary. To the dream killers, that made him an irresistible target. They imagined what it would be like to make someone never sleep again, to watch him descend into exhaustion and madness, and they smiled with morbid anticipation. Then, unexpectedly, the three dream killers collapsed onto the floor and fell asleep, their invisibility fading. After a short nap, they jerked awake and stared at one another in disbelief. Nobita remained asleep, completely unaffected. How could he be? Any deep sleeper they had ever targeted would wake at once when they drew out their sleep. Yet after draining so much, Nobita still slept on, and their own drowsiness had overwhelmed them. They shook themselves hard, trying to clear the fog, and for pride's sake, began drawing on Nobita's sleepiness again. Within seconds, they were nodding off. In a panic, they slapped themselves until their eyes snapped open, terror on their faces. This was the first time they'd encountered anything like it. What sort of human could make them lose control while sleeping so soundly himself? One of the dream killers let out a strange, static-laced shriek, more like a radio transmission than a voice. Moments later, 3 more dream killers slid in through the window. Their companions waved frantically and relayed the situation. The newcomers peered at Nobita with puzzled, tilted heads. Is this kid really that odd? All 6 drained at once. They had assumed that together they could finally wake Nobita and do to him what they wanted. Instead, all 6 collapsed, snoring loudly on the floor. On the monitor, dozens watched the bizarre scene and reacted in disbelief. Tony Stark, no, what is going on with this kid? He still won't wake up? He sleeps too much. Natasha, he made the dream killers fall asleep? A primary school kid with that kind of sleepiness? Luffy, amazing, he might rival Zoro. No way. Zoro wakes up if there's movement. This Nobita just won't break. Then in sleep contests, Zoro loses to Nobita. Hey, there's nothing to compare. Doraemon exhaled, relieved to see Nobita apparently fine. But relief was tinged with worry. Sooner or later, both Nobita and the dream killers would wake. What would happen then? Nobita finally stirred and opened his eyes, blinking up at the ceiling. Huh? I felt like something was bothering my sleep just now. He sat up slowly, scanning the room. He blinked in surprise at the 6 strange figures sprawled on the floor. Thinking he must still be dreaming, he lay back down for a few more minutes, then yawned and stretched. But when he looked again, the 6 dream killers were still there. His face darkened. He steeled himself and slapped his own cheek hard. The crack of the slap and the burning sting told him this was real. Hey, what are those things? Nobita cried, hair standing on end. Chapter 159, Spare Pocket. He stared at the screen and finally understood the flood of data Doraemon had sent. Doraemon was trapped inside an SCP object. Ah, Doraemon's trapped in an SCP object. What do I do? Nobita's whole body trembled as he faced the 6 dream killers. He was a coward by nature. He couldn't possibly face an SCP object alone. His legs shook from knees to toes. He stood frozen, utterly helpless in the middle of the IKEA mall. Ah, this won't do. How can Nobita deal with an SCP object by himself? Watching Nobita on the screen, Doraemon rubbed his head in distress, regretting his lack of preparation. I'm such an idiot. I should just smash myself. With that, he pulled a giant hammer from his pocket, intending to smash his own head in. No, Jian and the others rushed forward and grabbed the hammer. Calm down. That won't help. Bruce Wayne moved quickly to stop Doraemon too, surprised by how impulsive the usually upbeat robot could be. He couldn't help admiring the emotional complexity of such an advanced machine. Back in the room, Nobita stared at the 6 dream killers in terror. His panicked shouting had woken them all. They were slowly getting to their feet and fixing their gaze on him. Roar! One dream killer let out a furious roar. They were used to forcing others into sleeplessness. Being put to sleep themselves was an unbearable humiliation. No more pussyfooting. Time to teach this child a lesson. The 6 of them raised their claws and pounced. Ah! Ah! Nobita nearly fainted with fright. His face went white as a sheet, and he screamed until his throat hurt. Instinctively, he pulled the magic wand from his lower back. Over the last few days under Doraemon's supervision, he had been learning magic. He'd made little progress, but he had managed to memorize one spell, Wingardium Leviosa. For the first time since he'd started practicing, everything clicked. His pronunciation was perfect, his wrist flicked with confidence. Just as the claws were about to close on him, the tatami mat beneath them lifted sharply on its own. The 6 dream killers were hurled into the ceiling and then crashed back down to the floor. Eh! It worked! Nobita couldn't believe it. He'd actually pulled off a spell in real combat. Tears sprang to his eyes, and he burst into a brief, ecstatic cheer. Hooray! Hooray, Doraemon! Did you see that? I did it! But Doraemon's reply was curt and urgent. Idiot, run! Nobita noticed something was wrong. The dream killers weren't staying down. They were slowly getting up. A knock on the floor sent his heart lurching. He'd wasted his best chance to escape. He reached to cast the spell again, but a claw flashed, and the dream killer knocked the wand from his fingers. He stared at the empty space in his hand, stunned. The dream killers roared in anger. How dare a mere child make them stumble? They wanted to tear him apart. Nobita's terror escalated. He moved toward the doorway, only to find it blocked. He dove into a nearby closet and slammed the door shut, curling up and covering his head. Krillin muttered, "Ah, this kid is doomed." Tony Stark scoffed. He missed the best chance to get out. Too stupid. Diana bristled. "Don't be so dismissive. He's still a child." Chopper wailed, "Nobita, don't die." Huddled in the cramped closet, Nobita shook and thought of Doraemon's gadgets. What should I do? If only I had one of Doraemon's tools. His eyes fell on a pillow in the closet. Inspiration hit. He cracked open the cabinet door, and at that instant, a dream killer's claw split the wood, reaching in to snatch him. But Nobita's other hand already held a cannon. Where it had come from, he couldn't say, and he aimed it straight at a dream killer's face. Boom! The air cannon fired, then fired 5 more times in quick succession. 6 blasts hit 6 heads, knocking the dream killers to the floor unconscious, foaming at the mouth. Even these strange, monstrous creatures couldn't withstand the raw impact of the air cannon. Nobita let out a long, shaky breath. He looked down and noticed something else in his grasp, a 4th-dimensional pocket. He blinked. How do I have a 4th-dimensional pocket? Doraemon's voice, still anxious on the feed, explained, That's right. I have a spare pocket. Luckily, Nobita remembered in time. Rhodes chimed in, puzzled. A spare pocket? What's that cannon even fired from? Tony answered, That's an air cannon. That pocket opens into another dimension. It holds technology you can't even imagine. Rhodes nodded. If you say it's high-tech, it must be something else. Luffy, relieved, grinned. Anyway, it's great Nobita's okay. That was a real scare. Naruto added, Yeah, I thought he was done for. Even without having met, everyone watching felt bound to the boy. None of them wanted to see a child give his life in a fight like this. Garp laughed heartily. Ha ha! Even a kid can take down an SCP. Sengoku, we need to step up our game. Sengoku scowled. Don't go blowing up all of Marineford. Indeed, half of Marineford was in ruins. Garp had launched a massive, indiscriminate assault to get results quickly. He defeated several visionary beasts, but at the cost of nearly collapsing the place. Sengoku had to land a heavy-handed intervention to calm him. I still wonder how Whitebeard is doing, he said, turning his attention to the live feed of the strongest pirate. On the screen, something enormous drifted into view over Whitebeard, a titanic sky jellyfish, its bell larger than an island. Long tentacles trailed below, and along each one, countless dense, staring eyeballs. Hey, it can even combine, someone whispered, unsettled by the sight. Chapter 160, Merged Aerial Jellyfish. Whitebeard's face was unusually grave as he stared up at the sky. Countless small sky jellyfish had fused into a single, gigantic form, something far beyond his expectations. In all the creatures he'd seen, nothing had ever been this outrageous. What in the world is that? A jellyfish or a devil fruit user? Marco said, stunned. He'd never heard of anything like it. Merging, huh? I remember Roger's ship had someone who used a merge fruit, he added. Vista considered the sight for a moment. No, this isn't the same thing. Whitebeard shook his head, hard. The old giant's expression darkened. Then the massive sky jellyfish lashed out with one of its tentacles, sending an enormous, violent blast of air outward. The shockwave shattered 2 pirate ships before the tentacles even made contact. Screams rose from the decks. If the aftershock was already that destructive, the tentacles themselves would be even worse. Whitebeard's jaw tightened. You damned thing, he roared, fury burning in his eyes. The old man's anger made the air around him tremble. Each of his movements felt as if it could shake the world. "Boss," Marco began, alarmed at Whitebeard's condition. The captain was not as strong as he had been. His illness had taken its toll, and the previous fight had only made things worse. If he overexerted himself, it could be catastrophic. "My body is my own," Whitebeard bellowed in reply, cutting Marco off. His roar silenced everyone. "You stinking jellyfish! You dare hurt my sons! Prepare to die!" He crouched slightly, raised his arms, and clenched his fists, concentrating his tremor power inside them. With a single, devastating swing, he smashed his fist through the air, ripping a jagged crack across the sky. The sky jellyfish reeled under the invisible barrage. A storm of blows battered its gelatinous bulk, compressing and tearing its soft flesh. An unknown, viscous fluid leaked from the wounds. A strange, eerie wail echoed through the air, proof that Whitebeard's attacks had landed. The giant creature, however, was far from defeated. Its countless eyes turned to Whitebeard with murderous intent. Whitebeard merely smiled faintly. "Come if you dare," he taunted. Its abyssal maw gaped open, revealing row upon row of sharp, savage teeth. A terrifying column of air blasted outward, coalescing into a colossal tornado that shredded everything in its path. Seawater and even sea kings were sucked into the vortex and into the jellyfish itself. Crew members from Whitebeard's fleet were swept up and torn apart. Debris, buildings, and men disappeared into the spiral. Whitebeard raised his hands, curled his fingers until they were like iron hooks, and channeled crackling black lightning over his body. Then he drove his arms downward with immense force, his fingertips cutting through the air. The ground, the ocean, and the sky trembled in unison, Whitebeard's earthquakes fighting the tornado's winds. The two disasters clashed, the quake disrupting the tornado's pull and preventing it from smoothly swallowing everything. Meanwhile, in the Leo universe, the battle still raged. Leo, Gantras, and the four saucer beasts were locked in chaotic combat. Though fierce, Leo and Gantras had the upper hand, repeatedly driving the saucer beasts back. Moriboshi Dan and the Mac team were focused on the sky jellyfish. They fired relentlessly, taking down the floating creatures one by one, too many to count. Sky jellyfish were normally nearly impossible to detect, but Dan's extraordinary psychic powers allowed him to locate and target each of them. "Watch out!" he shouted as several jellyfish unleashed violent air currents, sweeping MAC members into the sky with the intent of devouring them. Dan used his ultra-psychic power to interfere with the creature's currents, disrupting them and letting the swept-up team members fall. It was a painful descent, but far better than being eaten. Once they were safe, Dan finished off the jellyfish that had attacked. They had already dispatched more than 20, but Dan's sixth sense prickled with warning. This was far from over. He scanned the sky and, horror mounting, saw sky jellyfish emerging everywhere. Dozens, hundreds, then thousands. Even 10,000. They came in all sizes. The sheer number made the hair on his neck stand on end. "How can there be so many?" one team member cried. "What do they want?" a woman whispered, shaking. The scattered creatures began congregating, coalescing the same way the pirate world jellyfish had. They merged into a single colossal sky jellyfish over 100 meters across, its countless pupils and innumerable tentacles making it grotesquely alien. Dan had studied the pirate world incidents and knew they could merge, but he never expected such vast numbers and such a monstrous result on his side. The newly formed Leviathan unleashed a devastating air column that spun into a destructive tornado, leveling buildings and sucking debris and people into its maw. "Run!" Dan shouted, and the team raced to put distance between themselves and the vortex. Leo, who had been fighting Nova, caught sight of the catastrophic scene. He shoved Nova away, leapt, and unleashed his Leo flying kick. He became a meteor of motion as he rocketed toward the towering sky jellyfish.